Shall we start? Ready to go? Okay, shall we get underway? Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. We're in very interesting times, to say the least. Might just take me a little while to organise how I want to sort of get into this. I've certainly the last when did this announcement happen? 2 days ago. On the one hand, it feels like I've lived weeks in those couple of days, and I've been through an incredible array of emotions about this, from absolutely stunned, first up, extremely angry, very sad, and I'm in the space now which says we've got 6 weeks to do something about something that, if unchanged, isn't the best for New Zealand, in my view, but you'll form your own views, and isn't the best for Otago Polytechnic. And that's, I'm stressing, if unchanged. So there's a lot contained within the reforms, that the proposed reforms, that no one can argue with. There's some devil in the detail that has been provided, which causes me to believe that there'll be even more devil in the detail that hasn't. and I say that advisedly, that you get clues to thinking, and we therefore have to anticipate, if the thinking is X as already revealed, what might the thinking be that hasn't been revealed? Because right now, I believe we're dealing with a reform that is not a reform with us. It's a reform being done to us. And it's whether or not we can actually claw back a reform that we can be part of, be genuine participants in. It seems hard to believe that will be the case, because the consultation period is 6 weeks. And it's already started. So, but again, let's be optimistic. There'll be some hard thinking to do and hard work to do, and we'll get our views across. So I see the next 6 weeks, and then there'll be a 2 or 3 week delay whilst the feedback is analysed and a decision is made to take notice of it or not, and then there'll be a cabinet decision to give the go-ahead to what was proposed, or what was proposed with some modifications, and it's not until that point that we should get ourselves sort of wound up. I've been wound up for several hours on various occasions in the last couple of days. Never thought I had the what do you call it? The wellspring of such foul language that that I've uttered around the house in the last couple of days. So look, I'm urging us to be in that space of thinking about, how can this be really good? How can we generate the opportunity? And I'm going to touch on a couple of points which I think are critical, that we should be focusing on. Right, away we go. So variously you will have read stuff. I noticed Stu here, he's been digging in big time, flicking stuff through to me, even from the enemy. That's really good there, Stu. Not that they're the enemy at all, of course. And some of you might have just been waiting for someone to interpret this stuff for you. There's an enormous amount to read. There's the actual proposals, and then you can get in behind the proposals and look at the advice to Cabinet, all of which was ignored. Here we are. So these are the headlines. Now, at this headline level, the initial stuff, we've got nothing to worry about. So the ITO system is being completely reformed. Their function has been split into two. The function of setting standards has been enhanced, but that's all they're going to be doing. Their function of purchasing training and of placing and supervising apprenticeships is to be discontinued. All purchase of training will be done by TEC. That's the model we work under now. They purchase the training. And all provision of vocational education as defined will be done by polytechnics. And so you have to see that as good news, a unified system. The definition of vocational education is interesting. It excludes degrees and it excludes postgraduate. And I'm astonished. The notion of what I would call advanced vocational practice that comes through degrees and postgrad not being vocational education reveals an extraordinarily narrow view of what vocational education is. It behoves us to try and educate the decision makers to that end, that this is far too narrow. The third bullet, personally, I welcome. It's a bullet that point when implemented, it's going to be an enormous challenge to us as tertiary educators, but it's long overdue. For too long, we've separated the training in the institution or online from the training in the workplace. And I think I've raised this point several occasions in the last 18 months. We've been moving in that direction, of course, and we've made significant inroads and we know what to do. So I applaud this, but we're going to have to see investment in the design of learning because it's an entirely different learning design from that which we know, and in the capabilities of staff. And there will be new roles that have to be thought through and people trained for and so on. A new funding system. I guess this is where the foul language comes from when I'm wandering around the house. I'll just let you know that there's only the cat and me in the house at the moment. You know, we're in the world of Donald Trump, and it spreads everywhere, which is to tell half truths, always. And you know, we've landed in a place where the polytech sector is being pilloried, and it is being pilloried for its incompetence, its inability to function financially, its inability to cope with fluctuations in employment and the consequences that has for enrolments. The bottom line is, it's been underfunded for a decade. And I guess I've got to get this bit out so I can get over it. Yes, those figures they're quoting, they're horrifying. 100 million spent on bailouts in the last year. I position it this way. Well, what if when you knew the funding system was so damn bad you didn't fix it? What would we be looking at now? And what I can tell you, we would still be looking at a couple of institutions with problems, not a systemic problem. And that's the fake news that just really winds me up. So I'm wound up now, so I'll calm down and step back. And then we've got this one polytechnic. Insist is the way to talk about it. Insist. You could say insist. You could get some good stuff out of that if you try hard. We're assured that this is a working title only. Okay. I'm not commenting too much on implications. I'll get to that. Why? Look, that's why. It's motherhood and apple pie why we have to agree. But are all those things truths? Yes, they are, aren't they? Have we been doing as well as we could on all of those? Nope, we haven't. So the actual rationale at that high level is fair enough. We do have to be better positioned for the changes that are taking place, particularly with automation and artificial intelligence and the impact on the world of work that's coming towards us really like a freight train. The second bullet, could we respond better? I think the answer is we could. Could we meet employers' expectations? Never in a million years, because their expectations are unrealistic. Better serve learners? Absolutely. Where we've let them down is that inability to follow them, I've used this term before, to follow them when they leave us to get work, because pay is more attractive than studying, and they've just dropped into a hole. And our ability to, if they've been in work and it dried up, our ability to pick them up and to provide them with the credit from the learning that they've done while they're in work, it's been abysmal really, and it's been abysmal as a sector. We've done pretty well as a sector. We lead the sector in our ability to recognise prior learning, but there's a long ways to go. And of course, who can argue? We've got to fix the system, even if I think the problem has been misrepresented. It still needs to be fixed. The fine print, and there's a lot of fine print here, and I've taken the trouble on this because it's the fine print that reveals the logic of the designers, and that's what we then need to engage with. So there's some new creatures called ISBs, industry standard bodies, which will be the ITOs morphing into ISBs if they want to. They don't have to. I can't imagine that any of them won't. But look at their role. At first, everyone was saying, yep, this is fantastic. They will set the standards. They will really dig in there. Those of you that have ever been on the British Standards Body website and looked at the work they do in the UK, it's good stuff. You get a clarity around what's needed for skilled people in a whole wide range of vocations. But they will moderate. First of all, they will approve all programs of learning. They will co-approve them with NZQA. They will moderate assessments, final assessments, and they will contribute to curriculum development. So they've got a significantly, the word I'm going to use, of course, is a value-laden one, but I think intrusive role, which no one initially picked up on. A good point, higher cost delivery will be funded at a higher rate. We're told that. We're assured that. So, you know, the low volume stuff in the outer regions, where you can only muster 6 or 7 students, will get better funding. Where there's training that is higher cost in its own right, it will get better funding. Interestingly enough, there's not been a peep about more funding. There's a shift of funding from the ITOs. That's the only thing that's on the table at the moment. There's been no language of investing in a world-class vocational education system for New Zealand. Degrees and posts, I've mentioned that, are not considered to be vocational education. Doesn't mean they're disappearing by the by. I'll cover this point later, but I might as well cover it now. We have been assured that what we are currently doing will continue. And the word currently was deliberately used. So as providers of degree and postgrad education, That will continue in whatever form Otago Polytechnic exists, delivered from this polytechnic. It will continue. Over time, some things will happen. I suspect there will be no more postgrad in the vocational ed sector.
Do you mean new postgrad?
No more new postgrad. No new postgrad. Yep. The new system will commence in 2020. Right, that's a fact. And the officials are working on the transition model as we speak. So it's going to happen. You know, I sort of see a contradiction, a well-designed system to be implemented in 6 months after you've made the final decision. Doesn't gel. All current ITPs will be disestablished. The Education Act will be amended, and we will disappear as entities, as autonomous entities, and will be replaced with the one. We are assured that whatever feedback we give, we'll be wasting our breath if there's not a one in it. So the challenge is we have to come up with a different model of one. There is a different model of one. Okay, so we're going to go for that. And the officials seem to have a sneaking admiration for the different model of one that we could come up with. So I've got a little bit, just this teensy-weensy bit of hope. But if the new model of one is going to work, then the voices have to be heard that what's proposed is not acceptable. Right? If we're just being quietly rational and describing this alternative, two things have to happen if we want something different. The politicians have to know we will be extremely angry if they don't change the model as presented. And by the way, we're not just shouting, here's the model that will work for us. So that's our challenge. More fine print. Open Polytechnic will be the online learning provider as part of this new institution. That's all other alternative online learning goes. Yes, there's an obvious implication of that. Our Tansy campus goes. If the proposal is implemented as is. Centres for vocational, the regional leadership groups will be set up in each region. They will advise, nominally they'll advise us, but the reality is they advise the head office and they advise the TEC as to what should be taught in our regions. Just by the by, there is no proposed advisory or governance structures for what we are on the 1st of January. There is no governance because on the 1st of January, Otago Polytechnic becomes a branch answerable to a head office. So we don't need any governance structures. Only the head office needs a governance structure. And that will be a governance body appointed entirely by the government. Centres of Vocational Excellence are proposed. Now, you would have read that the Minister has said, well, you know, don't know why these people are complaining down in the south. They have lots to contribute to the country. And we know that. And so this is what he's referring to. You can be Centres of Vocational Excellence. Okay, so there it is. I describe that as cake tomorrow. Yep, if you're really good, tomorrow there might be a cake sitting there for you to eat. No guarantees whatsoever, and unfortunately the the language around this concept is that these have to be spread around, right? So, you know, we'd get one, we might get two. The fact that we might actually be leading in 4 or 5 would be sort of irrelevant to the exercise. But hey, that is where there is opportunity. And so from my way of thinking, we have to position for that opportunity. We've got to be in the mode if all else fails, let's not shoot our feet off. That's the important thing. Operational decisions and capital planning, head office functions. Right, so might as well say it now. There ain't no big buildings going ahead here anytime soon. Government has shut down, no more capital approvals for large projects. We can still do some small projects, and we're going to move and on a lot of small capital projects that we can do without seeking TEC permission, and try and tidy up, I guess, the loose ends of both Central Campus and here. So we've just got to shift our heads quite quickly and looking at the small projects that we can get going and get committed, so that whilst we can't have the major upgrade of the campus that we're after, we can get the small ones. Back of house services will be provided centrally. So student management system, finance, HR, and so on and so on and so on. This is interesting because the Minister was advised there was no mileage in this. And he was advised that after an analysis by PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ideology trumps logic any day of the week. Curriculum development and assessment will be centralised. Hard one to know for sure. What we have been told is that the portfolio of the new institute, because all of our degrees will go into this new institute's portfolio. They won't be ours anymore. They will be rationalised over time. There is a lot of talk about why shouldn't we have one nursing degree. I've had that conversation 3 times with people that I've been trying to get on side. So we really do have to get that argument well sorted. Competition is definitely a dirty word in the context that we're operating in, with people not appreciating that there's what I'd call that soft competition, the people who are motivated by wanting to stand out. And hasn't that been us? Just wanting that edge, wanting to prove that we're just a little bit better. It seems what's happened is that the odd occasion where there's been, I'd call it predatory competition, one polytechnic going into another's territory and competing directly on the same course. Ironically, the major offender there is SIT in Christchurch with the trades, and basically apart from that there's almost nothing. But that competition has tainted all the views that anything that looks competitive is considered to be inherently evil. And so we just need to understand that sits there, and for us to reframe what competition at that soft level is about. I believe it's an inherent human trait, for most of us anyway.
So what about competition between like the university sector and the polytechnic?
Oh, well, that's okay. Yeah. And the Minister has contemplated the competition with PTEs and believes that this approach will strengthen polytechnics and they will better compete against the PTEs. You will all be employed by NZIST as of the 1st of January. And all learners will be enrolled with that institution. Of course, they will be enrolled through our SMSs, but they'll all end up in enrollees of that institution. What have we been told or assured? I think this is important. All current agreements and contracts, including employment contracts, will be honoured. It means that everyone will transfer into a new order with whatever employment contract you've got, your IEA, your CEA, ring-fenced. And the full set of what you've got, you keep. And you keep until it is rationalised.
That goes on the 1st of January.
Yes. Jobs will be lost. We can't. You can't go into Holocaust denial mode here. Will it be a Holocaust? No, I don't believe so. But they will be lost. And I think the fact that government is pledging to support retraining and redeployment options tells you that they know for sure that there is going to be significant job loss over time. Now, what will that over time be? So, first of all, be categorically assured that there will be no jobs lost here between now and the 31st of December. My assessment is there will be no one unemployed in 2020. Logic tells you that the work cannot simply be done to investigate, understand what rationalisation is possible initially, and initiate the consultations that are required and to arrive at redundancies till late in 2020. I'd be staggered if that were to occur. So I think, those are the time frames that to be thought about. Now, who is likely to be affected? Wherever there is centralisation and so-called rationalisation and consolidation of services, those jobs within the branches, the campuses, will be at risk. So back-of-house services and curriculum development. And depending on how things go, possibly staff development. There will be, of course, some, and there'll be some really good jobs going within the new organisation. But they won't be compensatory jobs. So by definition, the reason for doing this is to rationalise and economise. Yes?
When we talk about centralised jobs, has there been any sense of whether that's necessarily centralised in Wellington? Is it a physical centralisation?
We are assured, I didn't write it down in here, but I'm glad you've asked it. We are assured that the intention is not to have all activity of the head office in one site. Now, that could mean two things. It could mean that functions like, say, curriculum development got located, let's say for argument's sake, in Christchurch. It doesn't necessarily say that the new organisation will be open to remote workers. One would hope so. And one would hope that the two unions would argue vigorously for remote workers to be part of this, particularly in the transition period. But that's a detail that will need to be represented on. We're assured the consultation period is genuine and changes to the proposals can still be made, but I've noted those two things for you to temper the authenticity of the process. What are the implications? I'm looking at this in two parts for ITPs overall and staff overall. Learners will be better served. There's no doubts about that. We get through this. We'll be doing a better job collectively for learners in New Zealand. And for those two reasons. We won't have that discontinuity in the trades. and we will have better design curricula that's designed to follow learners through their work and learning journeys. We will be strengthened financially by taking over all of the apprenticeship training. There's 144,000 EFs transfer into the Polytech sector. That will bring a lot of jobs. Those of you that are currently teaching in the trades, you're the winner. Well, you're the winners here. There will be no redundancies in your areas. Even if there are shifts in, taught programs, the enormous amount of apprentice work coming will more than compensate. So there's certainly a good news front on the whole trades arena. There'll be significant efficiencies over time. It will be a more efficient system. There's no doubts about that. And I've already mentioned that. But the point I didn't mention, we have no autonomy. That I can't find anything in the papers to date about what we will be allowed to make decisions on. And so that will be dependent in the end on the philosophy of the leadership of the new institution. Could be a philosophy of centralisation and hierarchical decision making, or it could be a philosophy that says, hey, these people know what they've been doing it for yonks. Problem is that half of them don't know what they're doing. Half of our colleague institutions don't know what they're doing. That's why we're in this mess. So look, we just don't know how that's going to go, but right now, this goes ahead as is. We don't get to decide anything. We get to implement what we're asked to implement. So that's the challenge. The key word is autonomy. That's what has to end up in the new model, and that we put forward and that we argue for. Now, you would have seen in the ODT, the Mayor came out in the council meeting a couple of days back and he nailed that one bang on the head. And the truth of the matter is that I have had no conversations at that time with the Mayor. That was entirely on his own account. I've since had conversations with the Mayor, and he's going to be absolutely front-footing the autonomy argument for Otago Polytechnic. Right. Other implications. This is my interpretation. I own that. I've yet to see anywhere, anytime, a head office branch model that's flexible, responsive, and fosters innovation. They're contradictions in terms. The Minister's response is, but we want flexibility, responsiveness, and innovation. Well, you've got to design for it. And that's part of our argument. What is designed does not support those things. My view, and I'm just reading the conversations, new postgrad provision will most unlikely, and there will be no new degrees emerging from the branches. It's inconsistent with the intent as a unified program portfolio. I've mentioned the trades. Programs will be standardised over time. We'll be only allowed to deliver locally. The exception will be people will be allowed to move to Dunedin or to Central if they want to and live there and be delivered to. But we won't be allowed to deliver outside of the region. Yep.
Doesn't that include degrees?
What's that?
The program standardisation.
Yeah. I believe that's where we're heading. That they won't be first cab off the rank. That will come later. And why do I believe that? The point I was making to Ian before. The discussions amongst the officials are of the nature that why do we need all of these variants of degrees? Why can't we just have one of each? One business degree, one nursing degree, one engineering degree, blah, 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 blah. So that's what I'm saying. You have to understand the context. And so in understanding that context, our submissions need to make really good arguments for why more than one is good.
Or can you be a code, given that you've already done vocational education, it's a bit of a cycle, but could you be a code in a degree area, nonetheless, like you say, particular discipline or school area?
Yeah, well,
Terminology really, isn't it?
it is a contradiction in terms, but sort of understandable. You've got to remember this whole thing has been produced since October, end of October last year. So what we're responding to is the product of work done in November, December and January, right? And that's following the 10 months that we engaged up until the end of October. And when you can read it for yourself, the TEC gave good advice to the Minister in October. The Minister rejected that advice, and there's been this hastily put together new proposal. So there are a lot of gaps. But one of the examples given of a code was, for example, for applied research. So there you go. This is in the documentation. This is extraordinarily dangerous. Chris, I had this conversation with your people in Wellington, whenever, yesterday probably. And I think there's the belief that this isn't so, but this is so. This is embedded in the document, and we have to fight this. This is presented as a plus. And you can ask yourself, will you enjoy working as a teacher who receives all your lessons in a box? It'll be an online box, of course. Are you inwardly celebrating and disagreeing with me that I'm now relieved of having to do any curriculum development, any course development, any resource development? Because that's the plan. Yep.
Phil, could you just maybe dig a wee bit deeper on that? So just to clarify exactly what you're saying here, so it's saying that basically we'll be given lesson plans.
Yes,
And we'll teach lesson plans, and that's coming through quite clearly within the...
it is. So this is the proposal as is. This is the interpretation. As a sector, we did advise the Minister that there was scope for sharing of program and curriculum development. You might recall we had discussions here. We had a special academic board, in fact, and we were really quite clear where you drew the line. And you didn't remove the course design and resource development and the lesson planning from the teachers. So as it stands, we are risking an absolute de-skilling of the teaching profession. And I know that is not wanted. I know that the unions don't want that. We have to get that message through darn clearly in our representations. I think it's okay for a central agency to do the development down to the lesson in a box. Because I know, as I've talked to one or two of them, when we've hired a brand new lecturer from industry, and they come in, and it's like, what do I know about course design? I know nothing. What do I know about assessment? I know nothing. I love the lesson in a box. I'd love the assessment in a box for my first time through while I get to understand my new job. The intention is, as it mentioned there, assessment will be designed centrally, right? So that will lead to consistency of assessments. So as teachers, you won't be doing course design, you won't be doing assessment design. You'll be implementing. I just think that's the destruction of a profession. Yes?
When I was looking at this, my overwhelming concern was, well, lots of them, but I'm thinking that sounds like like a centralisation of te reo. So where is the Runaka partnership? Where is the Kaitahu dialect? Where is the Taranaki dialect in Taranaki? Lesson in a box sounds like we'll decide what the reo will be.
Well, you'll be
So I
thrilled to
hope
know
it's
that that's not regarded as vocational education. So it's been popped in the box that there can be some more discussion about. Yeah. So there are some exclusions as well as the degrees. That's another one.
Sorry, was there any timeline for this lessons in a box idea? Is this way down the track or?
I think that will be the early stages of work for the new agency will be in terms of rationalising, starting off with the trades curricula and then running into the technical certs and dips. I would expect that it will be something that will occur over a 3 or 4 year period unless there's a temptation to rush off and buy it all from TAFE in Australia.
TAFE just failed.
Well, there's been some problems with the TAFE, yeah. But there you go. It's an irony that we're modelling a system that, in the case of Queensland, it's interesting because I asked the guy who led the consultation last year, did you go to Queensland? And he said, yes. I said, did you talk to people on the ground? He said, yes. I said, did anyone tell you the system worked? And he said, no. And then, of course, there's a centralised One Institute TAFE in New South Wales that was supposed to be ending the days of financial problems for TAFEs that lost 243 million in its 3rd year of operation. We're not referencing good examples, but there are good examples internationally, and we're going to try and get those in front of the minister.
So with the application of that lessons in a box, then be that lecturers would then be held accountable for being, almost like an inspectorate of how they deliver it, to be assessed against the lessons in a box.
This has been framed as you will be now freed to spend a lot more time with your learners. I guess lecturers will still be accountable for really good learner interactions and probably a much higher level of pastoral care and support. So you could say that those functions would be, in a way, better resourced because other functions have gone. But this is a different teaching profession. Now, people will have individual views on that. I've put mine firmly on the table. I don't think it's a teaching profession that delivers lessons in a box. I think that's an insult. But it's a role, it's a worthy role, but it's not teaching as we know it. Okay, what are the implications for us? Okay, I've mentioned we will cease. We'll be a campus branch. You'll be those employees' conditions grandparented. Our current relationships and agreements will remain intact and will be honoured. We've been assured of that, but actually, in a way, we don't need to be assured. If they're legally binding agreements, they're legally binding agreements. And we're just going to be going back double checking that we've got good legally binding agreements for the things that we do want to have continue into the new era and not be sort of whipped away from us.
So does that mean out of region provision that currently exists, you would expect would still be able to continue in the...
That will continue at least into 2020, Sally. I don't think there'll be anyone knocking on the door to boot you out of Wellington. But beyond that, there'll be clearly a look at rationalising. And that's, in a sense, an obvious area. There's only three Polytech providers. Auckland campus, I know we've got Auckland campus people listening in. I can assure them that the agreements, that the legal arrangements around the Auckland campus are very tight. And so Auckland campus is business as usual. And I think the main decision that will be taken by this new institute down the track as to whether or not it will sell its interest inherited from Otago Polytechnic in Auckland campus. There's nothing whatsoever in the proposals that place Auckland campus at risk. So nothing that's officials have been thinking about or politicians have been thinking about that would say that operation can't continue into the future.
So we won't be involved in it, surely.
Well, see, this is really interesting. Maybe not. We're working quite hard to have Auckland campus part and parcel of Otago Polytechnic. Now, that's a moot point whether the new institution wants that to occur or where they want to say, just run it separately. We're doing what we're doing because NZQA is providing us with a very strong message, right? You have to be connected. So I don't know how that plays out in the end. We will just proceed business as usual in that regard. But it wouldn't surprise me if the decision came down quite quickly to say, there you are, you're a separate legal entity, just go your own way.
Phil, can I ask a question about occupational therapy? If
Yes.
there's already an OT degree, an occupational therapy degree in a university, and there's and the soft competition is from a polytech, would the government, as you see it, prefer to simply embed it, a single one in a university? Would that make more sense?
I think they would prefer to embed a single one. I wouldn't necessarily conclude that they see the university as the best place. They've been badly burnt, and know they have, around teacher education, which should have never gone into the universities. And the Teacher Council tells them that the graduates, they struggle to get fit-for-purpose graduates out of a university research-based model rather than a practice-based model. So it could happen, but it won't follow as night follows day, and it could go the other way. Yep.
So the follow-on question to that is, there's no mention really about anything about degrees other than to say they're not being
Correct.
degrees, but they are covered by the proposal. So that's not necessarily meaning that they see in the future degrees going from the polytech sector, or they still...
No, on the contrary, they're quite clear that they see this new institution being a degree provider. And they see that because they see that as essential to the international market as much as anything else. So no, degrees will not be removed. What's on the horizon, and I think it's probably the year 3 or late year 2, 3 horizon, will be rationalising. Okay. Tansy campus will likely have to be closed. We might be granted the cove status. I've mentioned some areas where we do stand out. It is business as usual for this year, and by sheer practicality, it's business as usual for 2020. The reality is they can only stand up a new entity, and it can only understand what it's got to deal with in 2020. 2021 is, or very late 2020 or 2021, is where I would expect to see changes starting to bite. I forgot to mention one thing that's probably relevant to AIC, although it isn't, but the intention is to centralise all international recruitment in Wellington. I imagine that will cause internationals to dry up on this campus, but it will not impact Auckland campus, because Auckland campus is not a polytechnic. It's a separate legal entity and will be free to continue with all of its own international recruiting. I've never heard so much naivety in my life. Officials were sitting there and told us, well, you know, if we remove your competition in recruiting for international students, we'll do a lot better. I've never seen in all my time a competitor visiting the same institution that we're recruiting from. We fish in different ponds, so to speak. It's a nonsense. It revealed the poverty of thinking. Yep.
What's your foresee on effect to PBRF?
Look, they're pretty quiet on research, other than if you've got degrees, you've got research. I don't think anyone's thought about the PBRF, to be honest.
Excuse me, Phil. I could be jumping the gun here, but first of all, thank you for what you shared thus far. My question is around which part or which one of the proposals that's been put forward are we likely, or are you likely to go with or add more recommendations to? Like, I'm interested in the fact that if they've now laid it all out and said this is what we must go by, is there one particular one that is close to what
Yep.
your vision is?
Yes. The model that we will advocate for will be to have a central agency with a defined set of responsibilities. It's a charter that makes it clear that they make those decisions, and that will be back of house stuff and shared services. We'll add in, we think, a central responsibility to provide proper training and development for staff as part and parcel of that. And then the model will comprise autonomous institutions that have their own charter, and their charter will provide them with decision-making responsibility over what really counts teaching, over what to teach and how to teach it. In other words, picking up the essence of the academic freedoms guaranteed in the current Education Act, but about to be repealed. And I think we've got an argument there to make, that where they're heading is taking away something that doesn't need to be taken away, and that has been enshrined in legislation since 1989. I think we've got a strong case. So that's the short of it, and I'll certainly put out more detail. And what are the examples internationally? Several North American states have exactly that model. So, for example, the University of California has a central body with a president, as they call them, responsible for a whole lot of things. And then there are these autonomous universities that are part and parcel of that system. And they're just given a mandate to get on and do a whole lot of stuff, but they're held to account through the central agency. There's similar examples in Canada, in Canadian provinces as provincial systems, and for community colleges in some states in the United States. So we're going to draw on these, and there is, of course, a Scottish one, the University of the Highlands and Islands, which is a model that entirely consistent with the alternative model, and which actually mirrors New Zealand. That's the interesting thing, in terms of population dispersal in particular.
Are all the other polytechnics on board with that same argument? Because it seems like the government would need all the polytechnics on board with them to implement this kind of change that gets them.
Not yet.
What is the feeling from the North Island politics?
Sorry?
Do you know what the feeling is from the North Island politics?
A lot of support for the alternative model. No one's actually really happy with what's been proposed. I think as long as the alternative is not cutting across the fixing of the financial problems, I think we can get everyone on board. It's by no means a journey like that. I think it's only a little gradual journey. Okay, so we've got a consultation period. I'm nearly through. What can we do? So we try to influence the final outcome. We believe that the consultation is authentic, and we act accordingly. So we'll head for the better model, and the key word is autonomy. Now, what I can tell you is Otago leaders are all behind us, and are preparing press releases and opinion pieces and lobbying stuff now. And you've read that Southland is going to come marching. That's great. We are going to try and just sort of shift the argument a little bit. We're going to lobby to have the new institution headquartered in Dunedin. You might say, we're dreaming. Well, actually we're not, because no one wants it in Wellington. No, truly. And no one except Auckland wants it in Auckland. Right. So, genuinely, we could win this. If we hold the government to account for their clear statement that they don't want everything all clumped into one of the major cities. The underpinning theme is regional development. We will underpin this case as two ways. As a regional development reason. Up until now, we've only seen one-way traffic out of Dunedin, consolidating stuff in the North Island or in Christchurch. And we've had Labour politicians well on record saying this is a travesty. So I think we can put their words back up in front of them. They get an opportunity here. The second reason is more compelling. This is the centre of tertiary education excellence. It cannot be denied. The University of Otago, Auckland will argue differently, but the University of Otago is the top university in the country. We are the top polytechnic in the country. This is an education city. The symbolism is fantastic. So those of you with, like to get your brains into that one, do your thinking and feed your ideas into how we build this business case. My understanding is that Dave Cull will fire the first shot today or tomorrow on this one to sort of plant the seed that it's time for some stuff to come to Dunedin. And then you're going to get lots of opportunities to make submissions. There will be a consultation here at the Polytechnic. I don't know when it is, that we'll get a schedule very shortly.
That consultation's not for the community.
No, it's not for the community.
So I think we need to be lobbying for a consult. They've only scheduled one in Christchurch, and I think we should be lobbying.
We have, Chris, and they've heard. I have to say, Penny Simmons was pretty wonderful here. She said, so we should believe that you're really firmly committed to regional development and regional responsiveness, and your consultation stops at Christchurch. So the Otago and Southland regions don't get a say. Actions speak louder than words. You can see the officials were deeply embarrassed. I suspect there'll be some more consultations. So there is one for staff. As soon as we know the time, we'll get it out to you. And look, do your best not to be working. I know it's hard if you're teaching, but let's turn out in force for that, and let's turn out online in force. Now, the help that you might need, just again, the lobbying, reinforcing to our local politicians in particular, that you've got things that you really want to be different in the final proposal, and giving them a hint of that is really, really important. and use Te Hono to ask your questions or to say, okay, I'm willing to do this, but I need this help. And we will work actively through the Te Hono site on this to give you as much help. And I have to say, we've got Chris here from the TEU, that I think those of you who are union members, you need to lobby the unions to be really clear what it is that you want them to advocate for on your behalf. I don't think you'll be pushing any water uphill with a rake, but it's really important to get the messages through what you want them to advocate for on your behalf. And I had some questions. There was a lot of other questions and answers. I've answered most of what came through, and there was just these. So just run your eye down and see if there's anything supplementary.
What about the students?
What about?
The students. I mean, it was great, like an initial, thing went out to them, but yes, we're going to be lobbying, we hope it might make change, but it must be very destabilising to the students. I'm guessing, thinking when you're talking about the anxiety, we sort of know what we're doing to perhaps the end of 2020.
Yeah.
We
will get.
Destabilised. I don't know if we can do anything except perhaps.
We will provide a clarity to students that's assuring them about their completion of studies and all of that type of thing.
Could the students come to the consultation period?
We can invite anyone we like to that consultation.
And encourage them to write submissions.
Yeah. Jane.
I was talking about the name. And I'm sure many other people are. And I know it's up for negotiation. Have we inherited the skills because of the ITOs and its P's and N's?
That will be part and parcel of it. I think the thinking narrowed down what vocational education was actually about.
So I'm wondering about this name. I mean, getting rid of the skills makes it a bit more palatable, especially internationally, because institutes of technology are people recognise that. And is that something that if we don't manage to retain Otago Polytechnic as like a branch, is that up for discussion?
Yes, it is definitely up for discussion. Yep. And
Excuse me, Phil, how would you like to work with professional organisations in this, like with the regulated professions like nursing and...
what I would like to see is the professional bodies being crystal clear of the notion of advanced practice, advanced vocational education, just at least pro forma protesting that a definition like that of vocational education is insulting to them, and that the polytechnic offerings at both undergrad and postgrad level must continue. I think those are the three messages for the professional bodies. So if you can get those flowing through, that will be fantastic. That was the second set of Q&A. All this will get posted on Te Hono. And look, these are unsettling times. The only reassurance I can give you categorically is that there's no changes for any of you for 2019. So 2019 is a year of enjoy it. Enjoy 2019. We don't need to add any more stresses.
Can we overspend the hospitality budget?
Sorry?
Can we overspend the hospitality budget?
Well, look, I have to say I've gained a whole new insight into surpluses.
Can we have a really big Christmas party?
We'll have the biggest of the best. I thought Elton John maybe for our guest. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
We just wanted to say we know this has been a really tough week for you, and thank you so much for coming and fighting for us today.
Thank you.